Do you have the record button?
Recording has just started. So, welcome to our Friday afternoon Happy Melly coffee session. This week, we will not have an official coffee, but an hijacked version to talk with some of our members. And there are two of our members, Durgesh and Dawan, on the call already. Hopefully some more are joining. We try to get some grip on everybody's understanding and wishes and desires around what we call experiments. Experiments are communicated as an important piece in the Management 3.0 community as well as in the Happy Melly community. Though we as Happy Melly have the feeling that we're missing still something to help our members to actively make use of that. So there's a couple of questions that we like to pose on the group around what do you feel or do you believe experiments are, how you want to use them, how do you use them today, how you want to get feedback on them, how do you want to provide feedback on them, and how do you feel or believe that we can learn, we can steal, we can improve each other's experiments. But that's a bit this session. Hi, Vanessa. Welcome.
I'd like to ask if maybe we do this as a sort of a lean coffee approach. Patrick has thrown 4 questions out on the imaginary lean coffee board. Are there other questions that people want us to cover today? And then we can just start working through each one with a time box. I'll take notes if you just guys, if you want to call out a question. Good.
Vanessa still moving around. Vanessa, did you get the question, Vanessa?
Still searching for the right spot.
No, sorry, we're not recording yet, are we?
Yes, we are.
Oh, okay.
But don't worry. This is Happy Melly, and everything is getting recorded, and it doesn't matter if people move.
Okay. Sorry, the questions, I signed on a few minutes late, so are they written down someplace?
So in Zoom group chat, which won't be visible to the recording viewers, Patrick raised up 4 initial questions, and we wanted to populate it with anything else, and we'll go through lean coffee style. So the first question is, how do we define what an experiment is? Second question is, how are we using them now? How would we like to use them in the future? How would we like to get feedback from the Happy Melly community on our experiments? And what can we do as a community to support each other in sharing, borrowing, stealing, improving each other's experiments? So if there's other questions that come to mind, let's just bubble them up, jot them down, and then we can lean coffee our way through them. I'll take notes.
Got it. So it's more specific to the Happy Melly teller experiments versus experiments and experimenting in general.
Not really. I mean, unless you have a clear definition of both and can say that there is a difference, yes. But that's the first question. What is for our members an experiment? Is it something that you list in teller, or is it something else? Anything else? And would you like to list it in teller or not?
So let's start there. I'll do a 7-minute timer, and let's just all share our ideas on what do we think experiments are. Tagging Vanessa. What's an experiment to you?
I think of it as trying something new that you want to explore. So it could be anything really simple. So, for example, I was just speaking with some of the workshop attendees for my last workshop, and we have a WhatsApp group. And I had been saying, I want to add more humor and more kind of jokes into my work. So I'm going to run a 21-day experiment doing a small micro joke a day, whether taking a picture of something funny and sharing it with the group, or, throwing back to knock-knock jokes, to just do a small exercise to get me exploring a certain topic area. This time it's humor, and do it for a certain amount of time so that there's enough kind of data to reflect on what worked and what went well, and what was learned, and if there's a new iteration. So that's kind of one way that I am exploring with experiments. There's other ways too, but that's just one example.
Nice. Durgesh, in your mind, what's an experiment?
So for me, it's I feel like cause and effect. So whenever I do any experiments, it's something like I always look forward for the effects, because I'm trying to experiment something, and I'm looking for some value that should come out of it, whether it's positive or negative. Based on that, again, we have to, because I'm an agile coach, so we feel like I should inspect and adapt for every experiments I do, be it at home, be it at workplace, anywhere. So that's what I feel like. It's a cause-effect thing, and I practice that at home as well.
Somebody like to go next? Go away. In your mind, experiments, what are they?
Yeah, I always think about chemistry. then you always do experiments, and then you have this bomb is going off. But okay, no, for me it's I'm also I think it's the same what Vanessa says. Try something completely new. For me, it's also a second thing is not postpone an experiment then, because then you think about, okay, this is let's try this out and just do it. For example, I do a lot of agile workshops, and the first question we always ask is when was the last time you were in a flow, for example. And then on a certain time I said to my colleague where I'm doing together these workshops, let's try a different question. Just and this question was, what is your superpower if you want to be a Superman or a Spider-Man, for example? And he said, okay, this is a nice question, let's try it out. So it's really do it directly and not postpone, because then, yeah, you're only gonna think about trying it out, and I think you just have to do it.
Varance, from an M3 or from Varance perspective.
Yeah, from what I was thinking now for the last few minutes, let's say when I work with the companies, I also work, let's say, as an agile coach, or I try to adopt Scrum at some companies. Let's say sometimes a huge experiment is just when I suggest to implementing kudo cards. Let's say that's for them. That's a total experiment for them. So it's for different people. What I want to say, for different people, it's different. Different thing can be experiment or not. For me, it's not experiment. Let's say I tried that many times and it worked. But for some companies, they are totally, let's say, surprised. So, somehow I usually persuade them to try it. And then at least we learn something, or we learn that it's great and we use it, or we learn that maybe, I don't know, the culture or in a company is not ready yet. So, and then we, let's say, stop with kudo box, and then we try something different. So I was thinking here, because or experimenting with Scrum process, let's say, when you try a different type of daily meetings, or so. Definitely what I was thinking is there is total different opinion about some things. Is it experiment or not? So like Kudo box, let's say. Some companies think that's rocket science for their culture. So yeah, that's my comment.
Cool. I read something, I think it was from Jason's recent post that was really good about change management. And let me say, and it just resonated with me for what I try to do with experiments, and what it sounds like a lot of you are doing is that we don't have easy answers, and we should never pretend that we have the easy answers. So we have some hypothesis in this complex system that nobody can fully understand. And through these experiments, we make that hypothesis visible, and we bring the outcome of our experiments to those involved, as well as people who can influence the environment that impacts the system that produces the culture we're trying to shape. He put it a little more articulately than I did.
I'm happy that we are recording the session, so we can re-listen.
Can we edit it? Can we edit it and put his words in there?
We'll put subtitles.
We'll put subtitles. Patrick, what should we go on to next? Or, well, Lean Coffee. Do we want to, so that was our 5 minutes on what an experiment is. Do we move on? Okay, Patrick.
So
next question.
Yeah, so I think the next question, with some sort of understanding of what everybody sees as an experiment, is then how do you use them? And maybe since we are in Happy Melly in a Happy Melly coffee session right now, is in the light of Happy Melly, we offer the possibilities to record experiments, but how do you use them? Because I hear Vanessa saying something about a WhatsApp group and taking a 21-day experiment with making one joke a day. Is it something that how do you use that in the light of, hey, I have an experiment, I want to bring that to the group, yes or no, want to have feedback? How do you want to use that? Do you want to use that within the Happy Melly context, within the network? Well, let's start with the ladies first again. It's maybe not fair, Vanessa. If you want seconds, you can say so.
No, it's okay. I mean, this specific one, this experiment specifically, there's different ways that people learn new information and also create connection across different perspectives, and humor can be helpful in that. And so I saw a gap in maybe my presentation style and thought, this could be a good exercise for me. So the goal was to help people to grasp new information or to make new insights maybe more approachable or easy to engage with. And then, other experiments can be, and I guess the other thing I wanted to say too about running experiments is, I believe to test on yourself first. So I'm testing on myself first. Then maybe after I've seen what happened with exploring this topic, I can introduce it to a group setting or a peer, and then kind of step by step make it larger and larger and larger to get people on board bit by bit. It could be, implementing a gratitude practice, like Veron said about the kudo box. Yeah, it's true. It might be rocket science for them to just throw a kudo box into the middle of the culture. So why don't I experiment on myself first and see, can I say something I'm grateful for every day for a certain period of time before then I expect others to consider this as useful? Because then I've already had the experience of what the experiment could do for myself, and I can give some talking points of what I learned, how it improved my work or happiness. So those are a couple other ways that I think it's walking the walk before trying to get others to join in.
We stick to the same circle for the moment, Durgesh.
Yeah. For me, I think like yes, I would echo Vanessa's words because that's something similar. I believe. What I believe is be the change you want to see in the world. So I would say yes for the experiments. We should experiment on ourselves. So I started with myself, then I moved on to my family because they are the closest one, and I can experiment with. And then with my kids, and then at the workplace because while experimenting, you should also feel comfortable performing your experiments. It should not be like, okay, just for the sake of experiment, I'm doing it and it's not acceptable, then you'll never get the results. You'll always get the negative results though. So I feel like experimenting in a better environment first, get the feedback, whether it's working or not, and then try implement that to improve the other environments. So I started with myself, then to my family, and then at workplace. So it's something like it's connected and it's working great for me. So that's what I can add on.
Bella?
Yeah, what can I add? I think yeah, when we, I think it's a natural thing as we as people are doing. We are experimenting our whole lives. When we start as a kid, we do our first steps. Then we going to try to learn reading. We are doing stuff as a young child, and during our lives, I think it's a continuous thing to do, to learn again and again and again to become master, I think. But and then you are going to be dead for at a certain time, and then you are done with experimenting. I think you do it your whole life, and it's just learning new things and how are things working. For example, I was last week. I joined a company who was making electronic microscopes in the Netherlands, and I never saw that those microscopes were so big. That is a complete room filled with more than 20,000 things, and that makes this electronic microscope. And this was completely new for me. I had this feeling, wow, why is this so big thing? And then they said to me, yeah, but we have to think about that the things could not move, dust cannot be going in, and I never thought about this thing. They already know, and I didn't. So for certain people, it's normal. For me, it's not normal. But when you first time when you recognize stuff, what's new for you, I think you can put it also on in the box of, okay, this is a little experiment for me because it's new information.
Okay. Frank or Andy, do you have still something to add to how do you use experiments?
I will just add something. I agree with the previous comments, but let's say I'm thinking now about let's say Scrum teams. You have software development team or some other team. You introduce Scrum, and after a while, this Scrum process, the same iterations, every iteration, every 2 weeks, you repeat the cycle. And after a while, it becomes a little bit boring. Let's say, at least to some team members or some companies. So it's great if you try new things. I think I find it very useful. If you just try new things and throw it away if it's not working, because let's say at least Scrum process can become after, I don't know, half a year or 1 year a little bit boring. Every cycle is the same, every iteration is the same, planning, demo plan. So yeah, I find experiments are a great opportunity to change things a little bit or to make it more attractive, or yeah, I don't know, something like that.
Okay, so we've hit time. Doe.
Vooraan. Is it really boring?
Not boring, but it's the same. It's the same. After
Yeah,
6 months.
But then you can do this experiment by, for example, say, okay, we have a Google Day.
Yeah.
And celebrate and do something else. And
yeah, I just want to.
say. Yeah, but it's only the time that is. It's a repeated time, and that's the only thing that can be boring. But yeah,
I agree.
Time is time.
Yeah, I agree.
So that's a good segue to a question I have in mind. Everybody done with question 2? So, Doe, you started to give feedback, which was wonderful, and that's my question. Is we've talked about what we consider the experiments are, how we run them in our own environments with our own teams, and how we learn from them. What I'm really curious about in my role as a community manager, and Patrick and I have spoken about this, is how do you, as a Happy Melly member or an M3.0 member, want to get feedback? How do you want to exchange? How do you want to interact with the Happy Melly community to get feedback on what you're trying in your own local setting? So I want to explore that. We run our experiments. How do we want to get Happy Melly community feedback on what we're planning, designing, and doing? What works?
Is there space in, for example, Slack to communicate about what your experiments are and what you are doing, and what is the outcome of that experiment, so you can share that. You can also think about guest blogging. For example, you run an experiment and you can write about how this experiment went and share it.
Yeah, so that way, yes, there's a number of ways, that are available to members. Either you log your experiment in Teller, or as your profile, you have the possibility to log as many experiments as you want, and they're pushed to Slack. You can, of course, just write about it in Slack and ask feedback. And there is always a possibility to submit whatever you want for a guest post on the Happy Melly blog. So the question is what would you prefer? How would you like that? If there's something you want to discuss about, what format would you like?
So before we jump there, I have 2 questions. So Patrick and I know these channels are available. We don't see them used much. And so 2 questions that come to mind as a problem solver is, do people know about it and just don't like it? Or they don't know about it, or they don't work. They know about it and they don't work. And that's where I scratch my head.
I can comment. So first, I can say before I was a Happy Melly member and understanding what the community was about, I've uncovered the experiments page, and I thought, this is interesting. And so I think just the representation that this is available for people to do kind of invites the idea or the concept to be part of how we work differently. So I liked that. And then I did upload some things into the experiments on Teller. And then I get these automated messages to update it. And I'm thinking, I already put it up there. Now I have to update it. And but I'm trying to write a blog post. Should I just write the blog post instead of updating Teller? What's going to happen if I update Teller? And then I'd like to offer something I observed in the speaker proposals for Agile 2016. I really like their format where you get the content in and then you wait for reviewers to come in and you set a different setting where it says, okay, this has been submitted as a draft. Now it's ready for people to review. So perhaps that could be a system where I would, put my experiment in and then invite at a certain right moment to invite others to comment. Because I've also put experiment ideas kind of informally into Slack. And sometimes you get no answers because of just timing or whatnot, or it becomes a huge debate and it turns into a bit of a flood. And I feel like I'm stepping backwards, like, no, that's not what I meant. And so trying to reframe. And so sometimes small groups of 3 or 4 people that have committed that, yes, I'll give you feedback, versus let me dump it into a group of 150 and see what happens. So those are a few things that I've experimented with experiments. So thank you for asking what's the right recipe to help get more meaningful relationship with this process. Yeah.
Anybody else? Durgesh, you've submitted a few experiments.
Yeah, so that's what I did submitted, I did shared, okay, but as Vanessa said, either you get feedback or you don't get feedback, or you get flooded. Okay, so it's something like, yes, I did receive few of the feedbacks, but again, the experiment I did, the outcome that I got from that experiment, that may not be, the output may not be similar for the other persons who is reading the post. They may feel like, because the situation that I experimented on, the environment I experimented on, the output was different. And they can have the similar experiment running on their case, but the environment is different, the output may be different. Okay, so that's what I feel like, and that's where the perception changes. That's where start flooding with the messages. Hey, this is not correct. This is right. This is wrong. But ultimately, if any of the experiments is helping me out, I feel like I should get feedback. I should be able to, give the context. The very first thing is how we are writing the blogs, how we are presenting our experiments to the audience to get better feedback. And as a Happy Melly members, I would say, if any one of the member, if we are posting any experiments, we should all go there, get through it, read it, and provide your experiments, experience or comments that will really boost everyone. As we said, we should start from ourselves with the community and then think of changing the world. So that's what I can think about.
Oh man, one of the things we're talking about is I like Vanessa's kill the update nagger, and that would certainly help people put in their second experiment. The other thing is direct the experiment updates that happen into a dedicated channel called feedback instead of the general channel, which is very noisy. A second phase, also what Vanessa suggested, some sort of forum with, this is really raw, I want some feedback, or this is done and here's the results, now what? That could be a cool thing. Other ideas?
I just saw on my profile that I could add experiments. This was the first time.
So anytime though you have a question on that, just ping me and we'll walk you through that. The same for the blog post, by the way. If you want to have a guest blog post, just ping me and we'll set you up for it.
Yeah, probably. I'm traveling too much to spend some time on my profile to just visit my own profile at Happy Melly.
But they just told me that traveling is great for writing. So you should be able to write a couple of draft blog posts in a plane or on a train. Or just we have the experts that can help to make it into real blog posts.
I always have the F side in the plane, so I just go sleeping.
Verons, do you have anything to add from your perspective of an M3 facilitator, an agent in that workspace? What can we do as a community to help support, share, borrow, steal.
Additional to the things that you already explained, I have no ideas what to add. Let's say so Slack channels, experiments, or blog posts. I don't know what to add. I don't know. I must admit, I have no idea at the moment. So what can we add to our community to maybe to improve this feedback process at least? Yeah. So.
Well, we'll add Dergish's thought as just do it. Right?
Yeah.
6 of us here. We can get started and try to get some momentum. That's the end of that time box. What's next?
I just want to add on, Patrick, when we talked about this experiment, right, in the profile section, I feel like that's not so user-friendly because it's just a text box. So it would be great if you can get some editor sort of thing wherein, while posting, which things needs to be bolded out, which things, a good editor will help on that. I'll post that in our, tools section, most probably. This is not the better form.
We have a Trello backlog of suggested improvements, and I'll put that in the video comment.
Yeah, I'll put that down. Yeah.
I think
Vanessa,
Vanessa. Let's move on. It's enough. Let's move on. No, what is it? One of those things. Go.
Yeah, so I think one of the things I noticed when I first put my first experiment into the Happy Melly teller was it was very open. I didn't know, well, what could be an experiment. So sometimes some guiding framework can just help encourage people to actually take the first step. And I think the first experiment is the hardest one to get people to jump onto. And so I noticed also that when giving workshops, that people have lots of ideas and they get excited. Oh, I want to bring a kudo box. I want to do a happiness store. I want to do these things. But then maybe they leave the workshop and on Monday they forget because they're checking their email and life happens. So I started making these little cards for people to write down their pledge. I will experiment with whatever idea that came out of the workshop. And so then after a couple iterations, I put together these cards, which you can find on the website. I wrote a blog article, and I called it the Louie card because it stands for Let's Experiment with It. And it has just a couple quick questions, an observation that it's inspiring the experiment, something you want to explore, so a question, like what if we said thank you every day? How would that impact our culture? It's an easy question. What kind of materials might you need, and what's your method? So your step 1, step 2. And they're not very big because I wanted them to be for small, easy to start with experiments. This isn't a big, change management implementation 6-month plan. This is a micro little project. And then of course you have to, or it's encouraged to do a retrospective after you've done your experiment. And so I used the yay questions from the workout on the back, and it says, what went well? What did I learn? And then at the bottom it says, in my next experiment, and of course, I added a Twitter call out to please share your stories so that everybody can continue learning. So I made these with the graphics from Management 3.0 so people could use them at work, at home. I was even thinking my nephew, he's 4 years old. I was like, maybe we could run some experiments with these. So that's something that I wanted to bring to the community to encourage just a mentality of experimenting and making it a little bit more approachable for somebody who hasn't maybe done it yet.
Maybe Vanessa, I can add something to that because I read your blog post about that. Just I think 1 or 2 hours after I started a micro experiment in my company, and this format is really nice. I need to check in. It is an experiment with 3 people, including myself. Something new for myself as well, and I want to use those cards. I need to confirm with these 2 people because it's really not common to be that open about all of this in my company. So I want to confirm with them they're fine with it, and then we put that in our internal social media platform and see where it goes. You know, the next experiment would be to figure out if we can replicate the experiment, but with a broader group of people to get some more attention for it.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the things too about implementing new practices is to make it visible. And so maybe the experiment cards is too much of a big leap. So maybe just leaving them on your desk and people say, "What is that?" And then you can kind of open the conversation. People can loop back and say, "Oh, you know what? Actually, why don't we try that?" Or also, I brought little beakers. I brought to my workshop is a little scientific beaker that I gave to all of the participants to just leave on your desk or put in the coffee room at the office. And people say, "Why is this here?" And you say, "Oh, funny that you asked, because I'm trying to encourage a mentality of experimentation." And again, it's a small little beaker, not a big one, to remind us to keep it small, don't overcomplicate it.
See, we are all up for that experiment. When I say, yeah, Andy's showing the time. We're coming to the end of this session. Well, thank everybody for the contributions. That was as a final word.
No, not a final word. In the chat, Durgesh was asking, where can we download these cards, Vanessa?
Yeah, so I just wrote a blog post for Happy Melly, so there's a link there, and also on my website I have them available on a Dropbox, so they're free to download like all the other Management 3.0 materials.
And what is that website URL?
So you can find it at human side. Yeah, okay. We can
humansideofstack.com.
.org and /resources. Yeah.
We'll put that in the speaking notes. Thank you, everybody. Excellent talk. We're at the end. Right on the nose. Have a great weekend.
Thanks. Bye.